Forgive me, for I have not done my Insecure review on time. But for the faithful few that were waiting on it, this will be the review of Insecure Season 4, Episode 4. When we last left our heroes, they were going through these Thanksgiving celebrations. And as what normally happens during a holiday, any kind of stress that's been going on in your life actually gets kind of magnified during a holiday. So Molly was kind of ambivalent about Andrew, and Issa and Molly were actually, they're stressed with their relationship together as far as friends is kind of was got to put on blast. And Lawrence is this thing with Condola and meeting the friends got stressed out. So which wasn't resolved during the last episode, and guess what? This episode it won't get resolved either. There's very little of Lawrence and Condola here. So this is basically the episode where we focus in on Issa and Molly as friends and what they're going through in life and in with their relationship. So the episode starts out as usual with Issa's sitting there going through her thing. So we're going to start with Issa. Issa's there going through her thing. She's kind of stressed out and trying to pull together this big event, the block party. And she's checking in on everybody. And she's, as normal, Issa's so focused on what she really wants to do, the stuff that she has to do kind of slip. And she forgets that her job is managing the apartment building. And she forgets that there's a plumber coming out and they're shutting off the water. And she forgets that she has to give the tenants notice. And so as she's going through her thing, going through her notes on her block party, she gets a rap on the door and in comes 85 Trina and the rest of the tenants to complain about the water. She apologizes and then the little boy says, "How old are you?" In other words, you're not acting responsibly as an adult. And he's quite correct. But that is Issa. Issa still has some growing to do as far as being responsible because she's been used to other people taking up the slack for her responsibility. Whether it's Lawrence, whether it's Molly, whether it's her crew, that's been Issa, like a happy-go-lucky child. And in this episode, we're finding out that all the people that played the adult role in her life are not there. Of course, there's no Lawrence. Her and Molly are having issues. So she's finding out trying to do this stuff on her own is kind of not what she's used to. In fact, in this episode, Condola is not returning her calls, possibly because of what happened in the last episode with Lawrence, which we don't have any insights to why this is going on. Sometimes I don't like Insecure. They leave a lot of dangling threads. I guess that's what women like. Women like to speculate about things that are not there. It's kind of irritating for men. But Condola, who's supposed to be helping her with the block party and being her advisor, is all of a sudden missing. In other words, it looks like Condola has ghosted Issa. So now Issa has to marshal her forces, marshal her maturity to actually keep this thing on track. Even her bosom buddy Mirror Bitch, that her alter ego that shows up in the mirror, can't hype her up and says that she has her own life to deal with and her own issues and she can't do it today. So in this instance, even Mirror Bitch has basically abandoned her, but that is the theme of the show as far as what Issa's going through. Now she has to grow up. She has to become more independent because the people that she was normally leaning on aren't there. There's even a case where her headliner drops out and she's calling people trying to find replacements. And in a desperate moment, she actually calls Molly, and Molly reminds her that, didn't you have a contract with this guy? Did you pay this guy? Did you get any legal help to actually put pressure on this, or your headliner to actually show up contractually like they're supposed to? And in other words, Molly's telling her to grow up. You know, there's a way to do things, and the way that you normally do things, which is like half-ass or shade tree, it's not going to work. At some point, you're going to have to do things the proper way. That's what Molly's really telling her. And so with the weight of adulthood weighing in on her, even when she's talking to Lawrence, things come through. The weight of adulthood weighing in on her. We see her at the end of the episode trying to take a shower. She doesn't even want to talk to her alter ego in the mirror because the day has been so hectic and so disastrous. She just wants to go to sleep and start fresh the next day. So this is Issa realizing that stepping up in class and actually taking on real responsibility, which is something she really hasn't done, especially with nobody to lean on. And sometimes, hey, it is what it is. Sometimes all you have is yourself. All you have is the belief in yourself, and that's waning right now. I think we're just going to get to Molly and Andrew, Asian Bay. Well, there's strife going on between Molly and Issa. We'll get to that right after this because that's something that's important. But Molly is a workaholic, and she's a 92 climber. And 92 climbers are almost like laser focused on proving themselves at work and proving themselves in their career, proving that they belong. I think there was a date night, and Molly asked Andrew over, and she's working so hard, she forgot that she asked Andrew over. And so it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and she's banging away, and the knock at the door, she remembers that Andrew's supposed to be there. She comes, she takes her rollers out, she walks to the door, and she's forgotten that she's asked to see him and that he's there. And now that he's there, then she says she's too busy with work, and he says, well, maybe I should go and leave you alone with your work. And she says, no, stay, because she really wants company. She really doesn't want to be alone. And she really wants him there. And so she says, why don't you just kick it in the bedroom, and when I'll give you a couple hours and I'll be in to join you. And so he goes to lay down, and she gets back to working, and she finishes up her brief, and by the time she finishes, it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. And Andrew's been asleep for the last 4 hours waiting on her. So she rushes in, apologizes, they do what they do, and seemingly it's all good. And the next few times you see Molly in the office, and you see her talking to her female attorneys, female co-workers, and they're banging on this case, and they're talking about their relationships. About one lady that she had a failed relationship because she's a workaholic, and her husband that she married, who's a teacher, wanted her home by 6, and for her to keep on a schedule, but work took precedent over her relationships. They got a divorce. And there was another lady that was there, and she talked about her relationship and how she had to figure out that she wanted to kind of put her man first, and that she had to leave and she couldn't stay all night. And so you see the two dichotomies. One, the knowing being a workaholic, you're going to have a failed relationship. If you don't put the people in your life, at least have a balance, a reasonable balance with work and home, then your relationships will probably fail. And Molly kind of take that to heart, but even as Andrew's calling her because she's made a date to go to a listening party with him, she cancels because she wants to be super Molly and stay and work late and prove herself that she's down for the firm. So later on in the episode, Molly and Andrew are having a date night, and they talk about their relationship. They're talking about food, and he gets a buzz, and he looks at his phone. And Molly is saying that, okay, tonight I'm all yours, and we're gonna eat, and you can come back to my place, and we can open up some wine and wine, and I think it's wine and chocolates, and then after that they can get busy. And Andrew looks at her and it's like, okay, you know what? I arranged a poker night with the guys, and so I'm gonna slide by there in a couple hours and play poker. And Molly's disappointed because she said, I thought this was a date night. He said, it is, but you're always busy. And I assume that you'd be working, because that's what's been happening over the past month or so. There's a date night, but you're always working. So He did what any man would do that's reasonable if you're dating, is you make other plans. You actually adjust your life. If she's not going to be reliable and she's not going to stick to a schedule, they stick to a plan, then you make alternative plans, and that's what's happened. And he said, basically, you're not making me a priority. And it was fine as long as it was casual. It was no big deal, but the thing is, you wanted to be exclusive, and we moved beyond casual. And now I need to know where I fit in your life. In other words, I'm adjusting to you, and you can't be all over the place. If you're not going to be reliable, and a date night means you may or may not be available, or you may or may not have time for me, I still have a life to live. And that's what he's telling him. So basically he's telling you have to make up your mind. So later in the episode, we see when Issa needs a favor from Molly to ask Andrew something. Ask Andrew a favor to see if he could get her an in as far as getting a replacement headliner for her block party. Now, some of that is Molly rubbing Issa's nose in it. And some of it is Molly is deciding she's going to take Issa's advice and be happy that her relationship with Andrew is way more important to her. And she's not willing to risk her relationship with Andrew to ask a favor for Issa, even though she knows that Issa needs it. So some of that is Molly being a bitch and rubbing Issa's nose in it, of also not wanting to involve Issa in her relationship, which is what she's saying. I need to keep these two things separate. In other words, your messy life and the messiness of what you're doing cannot spill back on a relationship I'm trying to build. In fact, Molly said it previously when she was talking to Andrew that in her relationship, she's never gotten this far where it's gotten serious. So like what she's saying, that this is new territory for her. She's never really given in enough to actually get this far, because most of the time her relationships kind of blow up well before it gets to this point. She would actually do something to mess it up. So I feel her on keeping those two things separate. Sometimes you have to, depending on who it is and what it is. If you got messy girlfriends or messy guys around you, if you want to keep a stable relationship, sometimes you have to keep those two things separate, which is the right thing to do, but I do believe this is for the wrong reason, as we'll see next. Now, this season can be encapsulated into this parking scene that Molly and Issa are trying to find a parking spot. Issa's trying to find a parking spot because Tiffany has just had the baby. And she's coming by to visit Tiffany and the baby. And so Issa spots the parking spot and she starts to back in, and Molly stops her. Molly refuses to give Issa the parking spot, even though Issa was there first. And you see this tense, sort of nice, nasty battle for a parking spot as an encapsulation of a power struggle. Even though Issa's there first and Issa's clearly backing in, Molly refuses to give Issa the parking spot to prove dominance. And Molly refuses to relent, even to the point where they almost collide. So as usual, because Issa is the lower in the pecking order with Molly, Issa says, I'm just going to go around the block. So Issa gives way, gives Molly the parking spot, and goes 2 or 3 blocks away to actually park. And when Issa makes a joke that, you're going to give me a lift back to my car since you made me find this faraway parking spot because you took my spot. And Molly tells, how is it my fault to give you a spot that was already mine? That's expressing dominance in the pecking order. And all throughout this episode, it's Molly showing dominance and showing Issa where her place is. Even Issa says to Kelly, does it seem that me and Molly have been off? And nobody really notices this except them, because Molly's been on my neck all month. And Molly complains to the other 92, which is Tiffany, about the same thing. Does it seem like me and Issa have been off? And how Issa's messy life is constantly spilling over and messing up everything. Even when she peeks outside and she sees Lawrence and Issa talking, and she assumes that Issa's being messy and trying to get Lawrence back and inviting her old boyfriend back into a relationship, even though clearly when you hear them talking, it's not. Lawrence wants to talk to her about something, more likely about Condola, because of the question that Condola approached him with at the end of last episode, if Issa hadn't cheated, would Lawrence still be with her? Which that shouldn't even be a question. But Molly sees it as Issa and Lawrence joking around. And then as Lawrence is walking out the gate, Issa gets a message. Issa gets a message from one of her vendors, and she has to go. And so Issa says she has to go, and she's rushing out. And Molly assumes that Issa's rushing out to actually hook up with Lawrence. And Molly's shaking her head like, poor messy Issa, she can't fend for herself without me. That's Molly showing dominance. And when she refuses to help Issa get the headliner, that's Molly proving to Issa that without her help, she would be nothing. She's rubbing Issa's nose on her own bullshit to prove to her that she's not worthy, and prove to her that she's better than Issa, and prove to her that she should have never had tried to replace Molly with Condola, because really that's what it's about, holding dominance over somebody that's under you. And Issa has always been under Molly, which is why Molly was jealous in the first place, that Issa was actually strutting her independence by having another person as a mentor. And Issa vying for equality in the relationship, which there hasn't been. Molly's always been the fixer. Molly's always been the person that would, in a superior position, the better job, the better clothes, the better house, more money. So it's real interesting to see the interpersonal dynamics of what Cousin T-Talk calls a fade, a female hierarchy group. Even as their hierarchy group is actually fawning over Tiffany and Derek's baby and Tiffany's life. The pecking order is still the pecking order. Dominance is still dominance. Men show dominance in the same kind of pecking order in a different way. It's usually more physical, brute strength or brute ability versus somebody's incompetence or lack of physical ability. Women, it's more social. Women, it's more catty. Women, it's more subtle. But you see the hierarchy and the pecking order and the dominance, the show of dominance, just by a parking spot. Now, two dudes would have not backed down. They got out and fought. And the loser would have had to go park around the block. But with women, it's social and it's psychological. And Issa has backed down both times, even when Molly told her no, that she wasn't going to help her. Or Molly told her that she didn't take care of business by not enforcing the contract of the headliner. More like a mother hen telling a child what to do. And all three times, Issa backed down. Which is why at the end, Issa's confused like a confused child. Condola's ghosted on her. Molly's not helping her. And Molly is basically mushing her nose in her own poop. But that's the way I see it. I think this is short and sweet, but that is the essence of this show. I don't know how many people saw it. People talk about who's right and wrong. But I saw it clearly from that encapsulation of Molly and Issa's relationship during their tussle over the parking spot. It's actually very well done. Very subtle, but very well done. And it encapsulates Molly and Issa's relationship. And we're going to see whether Issa gets out of that spot, gets out of the hierarchy group, or what she's going to do. It'll be interesting to see the results of this block party and see where Issa fits in and what Issa does. Does she grow out of it? Does she reject it? Does she fall back into it? We'll see. But with that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys.